All right, hi everybody. I am Zach Huber, and I'll be leading you today in Introduction to Prospect Research. This is the first time I'm doing this new workshop, so I'm not sure exactly how the timing is going to work out. So hopefully, I'm planning on ending at 3. If it runs long or short, hopefully, we'll get pretty close to that time. Feel free throughout to send chat questions in. I have a few spots. I'll stop and check them. Or if you're comfortable, you can always unmute yourself and just shout out your questions. I don't mind. This session is going to be and emailed out, and so you'll get the slides with that. So if you're not much of a note taker, that's okay. You'll get all of this sent to you afterwards. So like I said, welcome. This is Introduction to Prospect Research. Let's get started. So today we're going to cover kind of just the basics of getting started on everything. This isn't intended for any sort of advanced user or anything. It's really just the basics of getting started for your organization. So we'll cover what prospect research is, how to get started on a plan, and then where to find those things for free. So let me move my videos here. It's always like Command Central. I have to get everything set up just right. Okay, so let's get started. Prospect research is a technique used by fundraisers, development teams, and nonprofit organizations to learn more about their donors' personal backgrounds, past giving histories, wealth indicators, and philanthropic motivations to evaluate a prospect's ability to give and warmth towards an organization. And of course, prospect research is essential for identifying high-impact donors within an organization's current donor pool and in the larger community. So prospect research really is kind of on the front side of the donor cycle. It's usually kind of that first or second step. You get the donations made by an individual, or you've identified an individual through a volunteer, or maybe it's an alumni of your organization, or just someone that you have interactions with in the community. And so you can see it doesn't always start with the donation, but then you do the prospect research and make your plan for that individual. You assign someone to make a relationship, you solicit the donor, and then hopefully, you get that gift and then you steward that donor, all the while collecting more information and adding that to the profile of the individual. So there's a lot of benefits for prospect research. There's identifying corporate giving opportunities, learning about where people work, if they have matching gifts at their place of work, or maybe they're in a position where they can also encourage their job to donate to your organization. It optimizes ongoing fundraising activities so that you're really focused on donors with capacity and understanding who can give what. It analyzes your donor giving patterns. So, if there's an affinity, if you take money in certain different ways, if you have different programs the donor can give to, you can segment the certain marketing pieces that go to that donor and really grow their affinity for certain pieces. It also generates new prospects, like we talked about with the volunteers or alumni, people that haven't donated to your organization but are kind of in your sphere. And it identifies planned or deferred giving prospects. So when you take in all this information, you'll be able to see what kind of assets a person has. And so maybe they can give stock gifts to your organization or property, or make that planned gift for, down the road when maybe they don't have any kids and they're looking to give away some of their assets at the end of their life. It also refines major gift outreach. So I imagine a lot of us are probably coming from smaller organizations and we don't have a lot of staff to donate to, like major gift officers, but everyone can start building that relationship within an organization at all levels. So it can help you really target how to devote that energy and time. And then it fills in gaps in donor data. So you might know a little bit about your donors, but you probably aren't having conversations with them on how much their house is worth, or how long they've worked somewhere. So it kind of fills in those gaps. What kind of info do we gather when it comes to prospect research? There are 2 different types of data. There's the philanthropic indicators, which are previous donations to your nonprofit, donations to other nonprofits, nonprofit involvement, personal information, and then there's wealth indicators, which can be real estate ownership, SEC, which is Securities and Exchange Commission transactions, so stock or other types of securities. business affiliations, and then political giving. And so with those two sets of data, the difference between a philanthropic indicator and a wealth indicator is that a wealth indicator shows their ability to give, and the philanthropic indicator will show individuals' inclination to give to a charity, because we know not all rich people want to give away their money. So we want to know, one, do they have that capacity, but two, are they also willing to part with it to charitable organizations? Because you don't want to make that ask and just get that straight no, how dare you ask me, I'm not interested at all. So we really want to know that affinity as well. And then, so what factors can we look at to predict future giving? The very first is past charitable giving. Past giving is really the greatest indicator of future giving. And you see at the bottom here, these statistics come from Donor Search. A donor who has made a gift of over $100,000 to a nonprofit is 32 times more likely to donate to another organization than the average person is. There's actually kind of, there's a study that shows, you know, where that level is to indicate how many more times likely they are to donate. So we have 32 times if they have given over $100,000, but an individual who's given a gift of $50,000 to $100,000 is 25 times more likely to give to a charitable donation elsewhere. An individual who's given in that $10,000 range to $25,000 is 10 times more likely, and an individual who's given in that $5,000 to $10,000 range is 5 times more likely to make a charitable donation to another organization. Like I said, that comes from the organization Donor Search. And then also we look at political giving. So this is all public information, a political giving. So a single lifetime gift to the Federal Election Committee, that is the FEC, of $250 will put a constituent in the top 6% of the US population for wealth. So if they also give $1,000, it puts them in the top 0.1%. So we really can take a look to see if they've given to a political campaign, then they are at a certain wealth level usually, or willing to give. So an individual that's given $2,500 in his or her lifetime to a political campaign is 14 times more likely to give a philanthropic donation. And it keeps going down from there. But why is a political donation so predictively powerful? And there's kind of two answers to that. The size of a prospect's past political gift can clue you in to giving capacity of a particular candidate. And by candidate, I mean the individual, not like the candidate they're giving to. And then anyone who gives a political donation is clearly open to the idea of making a donation to a cause that they feel passionate about. The people usually feel very passionate about a candidate when they're willing to give to them. So if you can strike a similar chord in your communications with those prospects, you'll have a greater chance of securing a gift. And you can even take that one step further. So if you can figure out where that gift went, which you would be able to through the data I'll show you, if it went to a certain candidate, you can kind of analyze, you know, what does that candidate stand for, and maybe find those certain pieces within your organization to strike that chord with them. And then there's participation in charitable organizations, so volunteering primarily. Those who participate in charitable organizations understand nonprofits and the work that goes into fundraising. And in fact, participation in charitable foundation as a trustee or nonprofit director is an incredibly powerful predictor of future giving. So if you can find out if they're serving on a board or if they work for a nonprofit, they certainly understand. Of course, if they work for a nonprofit, they might not have a lot of money to give. But perhaps if they're on that board or a high-level volunteer, that'll be certainly predictive of their ability to give. And then there's real estate ownership. That's the last factor here that we have listed. Real estate ownership doubles as both a wealth marker and a philanthropic indicator. So an individual that owns $2 million plus worth of real estate is 17 times more likely to give philanthropically than the average person. And then an individual, the step lower, $1 to $2 million worth of real estate is 4 times more likely to give philanthropically. And someone with a home or property, it doesn't have to be one home, an individual that owns $750,000 to $1 million of real estate is 2 times more likely to give than the average person. So you can see these factors that we can really grab onto pretty easily with data can help us decide if a person has capacity or willingness to give to a nonprofit. So how do you choose which prospects of yours that you're going to screen? Because you don't usually have time to focus on everybody, especially, you might get someone in the $5 to $100 donation. That might be good to watch over time if they're giving you a bunch of $100 donations, but that might not be the best, to go through this process of researching them if they're at that low level. So we look at historic gift size as one of the reasons to prospect screen. Historic gift size means, setting your sights and conducting screenings on donors who have already given large amounts in the past. It may seem counterintuitive, but research also bears out that even major donors who have given once are more likely to give in the future. So even if they're not giving every single year, if they have given a sizable donation to your organization, certainly you want to start stewarding that in that donor, but you want to take the time to start doing research on that donor. The frequency and recency with which a donor has given is a fantastic predictor of their warmth towards your organization, but then you can whittle down your donor list for screening by narrowing your focus to include only donors who have given frequently over time. So maybe you don't even have time to just steward people, sorry, using the word steward, to research people who have given one donation. Maybe it's more important for you to focus on donors who have given more frequently. And that leads us to high organizational loyalty. So if a donor has given a number of times, they clearly have a lot of loyalty for your cause, or sometimes it's not even the cause, sometimes it's the people that you have on your team, and people are really loyal to those and have built relationships over the course of time. And then there's event-specific prospects. So you can either choose to screen your event attendees before or after a major fundraising event. I know not a lot of people are having those right now, but someday we'll have those galas and those donor dinners again. And the advantage of screening before will help you guide your employees to conversations with specific attendees that are at the event. Or if it's kind of a first-time event, or you're expecting a lot of new people to be there, you can conduct screening after the event has occurred, so that you know who to kind of implore strategies on after you've had employees that have talked to certain donors. So then we'll get into how to make a plan from the data. I'm going to check to see if there's any questions in the chat here. Okay, nothing yet. That's okay. Feel free to send them in as we go, though. So step one, once you've started collecting the data, and I'll get to how to collect the data here at the end because I have lots to show and share with you. But once you have the data, then you start to create your plan. To ensure that your team is taking the most responsible and reasonable approach possible, it's best to plan out exactly how you'll be handling that process prior to really starting it, especially with small shops. Really who's going to take care of doing that research? What are you going to do with that research? Who are you going to share it with? And what are they going to do with that? So it's all about creating that plan. So you need to ask yourself a few questions. What are your overall fundraising goals? What high-level fundraising approaches will you implement with your data? And who will be managing the prospect research or prospect screening process and incorporating it into the overall fundraising strategy? So sometimes that just might be one person. Maybe it's just your executive director who has the time, well, no one has the time and in a nonprofit, but who will be making the time to do some of this research. Or maybe you have someone on the development side, or maybe you're lucky and you even have a gift officer who can do some of this as well. But you really need to establish that from the start. And I think that should say step two. Oh, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. So second part of step one is what your plan should include. So that would be setting your screening goals, such as how many of the major gift prospect profiles you're going to look at and add to someone's plate, and then a timeline for that project. So are you going to set certain goals through 1 year? Are you going to do quarterly goals for certain donors? And then you're going to want to kind of work out who is going to do those, so those department responsibilities. And the better your planning is, the better you'll be able to utilize those results. So step two is cleaning your data. Cleaning up your data before you conduct fundraising research is essential to receiving the most accurate and helpful results. So usually this involves consolidating duplicate profiles if you have them, updating outdated contact information. If they move, they have new phone numbers, especially depending on how old your data is. You know, a lot of people have moved from landlines to cell phones, and it's really hard to find cell phone numbers. Removing lapsed donors from your list. So database areas to focus on is really that contact information, internal giving data. Hopefully you've had good records over time if they've given, existing relationship data, if they have anyone on your team that they've already been working with over time. And then how extensively you want to clean up your data really depends on the state of your existing information. I remember I worked at a nonprofit and we had really minimal data on things. We didn't even have a good track record of past giving. We maybe had like 2 or 3 years worth on our fingertips, but then all of the older data just was somewhere buried, and we had to work on a big project to incorporate those all in one central location. So your data doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to provide enough information to reap good results. So step 3 is validating your results. So once you have done some of this research, you're going to want to validate them. You need to ensure that you're accurate and everything you've looked for makes logical sense, you know, because sometimes you can have a donor that has a common name and you might have pulled research for the wrong person. So we'll see in a couple spots when we look at where we're going to pull our data from. If you kind of have a good idea of how old someone is and you're looking at a record for someone and it's 20 years younger, then you probably have the wrong person. If you kind of have a good idea where they live and you're looking and it doesn't really make sense, you need to keep aware of the things that you already know so that you're not pulling the wrong data in. So you want to take that time to validate your results. And prospect research is an immensely useful tool, but only when it's done correctly. So whether you have an in-house team putting together this, or even if you're working with a company to do bulk screening, you really want to take the time to make sure that everything makes sense. Step 4 would be analyzing the results. So screening results will provide, with that wealth of useful information. Part of the analysis process is devising a system to rank your prospects. And, that's not an exact science. If you use certain programs, they have their own ranking system. I know like Blackbaud, Razor's Edge, they have a couple of rating systems. Donor Search has rating systems. But when you're really starting this out, you just need to do something that makes sense to you. Maybe it's a number score, a plus or a minus, but you need to analyze it so that you can decide, which group of people you really want to focus your time on soliciting, and analyzing your data is going to allow you to do that. Step 5 is planning your ask, which not everybody wants to do. So planning for the big ask is a crucial step in any fundraising research. It's why we're doing the prospect research to begin with. You have the necessary and pertinent information gathered now. You've sorted it, you've ranked it. So now it's time to really develop that plan and decide how you're going to foster that relationship and learn more over time about your prospects. So taking those different data segmentations into account, craft the appropriate strategies for soliciting donations based on what you know. So, at this point, you'll have a good idea of someone's capacity, and you'll know what size that ask can probably look like. You're not always going to get it right, and that's okay. That's a conversation that you'll have with a donor. Hopefully it's not something so outlandishly insulting, and that's why you've done the research. So then you can, identify which donors are going to get an invitation, a call, a visit, those kinds of things based off of the information that you've received, and assigning them to major gift officers if you have them. It might also not be a major gift officer. It could be someone on your development team. It could be your executive director. But in my research, I've seen that 150 prospects is really that max. I recommend less. When I worked at a university, I think we tried to do about 75. You really want to be able to make sure that you have time to develop those relationships meaningfully. Step 6 is soliciting. So now that you've done your homework and you've plotted your course, it's time to get asking. So take everything that you've learned and let it really inform your work. Your prospect research should help you have a better sense of the amount you're going to ask for, what communication channels a donor prefers, what your donor connects with at your organization, and then you've spent considerable time building your profile, so you should definitely use them and really encourage people to check them before interacting with them, even if it's your program staff. I mean, they should understand your interactions with certain people better. I mean, a lot of times people we're going to solicit from are the very people who are using our services. Especially as you cultivate major donors, you want to keep track of all of the information that people are getting personally, one-on-one in a database. And it doesn't have to be a complicated database to start out with. Maybe you'll get there, maybe you'll be able to pay for a Blackbaud Razor's Edge or something like that. But just having some sort of database where you're keeping track of this information will really help you over time. And the last step is step 7, making improvements. After you've gone through all the steps of researching, cultivating, and soliciting, it's time to take a step back and really assess everything. And no process is going to be streamlined in the first pass, and so it's okay that it didn't really make sense the first time through. What kind of improvements can you make? What are really those pieces of data that you want? Maybe some of them don't necessarily make sense for you, and you don't have to really spend time getting everything. So you're going to want to really take a critical look at that. And so with any nonprofit effort, you're really going to have to make sure you're getting the hang of it. There's always going to be a learning curve, and really just taking that time to improve your technique will make it better the next time around. So about halfway through, next we're going to spend some time finding that data. And let me check here. This is a good time to see if there's any questions. None yet. Okay. So the first, we're going to break them out into 2 sections here. So freely available tools are what we'll start with first, and then I'm going to break into some tools that we have here at the library. So the first ones we'll take a look at, and I usually try to do this, I'll take you to the website, but now I'm going to, there's so many resources to look at. I'm actually just going to walk you through some screenshots on how to find these pieces of data. It's not important for you to memorize these details. You can always contact me and we can work on this together. But we're going to go over those government-related sources, the SEC, the FEC, and the county tax assessor's site. We're not going to go over social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google. Even though Google is not really social media, it's more of just, you really should just on a basic level probably Google people, see if there's any news articles that come up. But I assume at this point you probably know how to use some of those pieces already. But then we'll also take a look at this resource called DS Giving. So the first one we'll look at here is the SEC, which is the Securities and Exchange Commission. So when we start their home page, it's sec.gov, and what we're going to take a look at is those filings, which I have highlighted there on the screen. When you click on filings, it's going to take you to another page here. The database that we want to access is called Edgar, EDGAR. One way to get to it is, where I have it circled there. There's a couple links there, but that's just the quickest way, I think. So when we'll take a look, we'll get to Edgar, and we'll make sure that we're going to click on the first option there, the Edgar full text. So Edgar is how we can find the SEC filings, and that really includes securities and stocks and pieces that, it gives us a good idea if they have that, what kind of level of wealth they have, but also knowing that they have stock is good for an ask, because they can donate stock to your organization pretty easily. It would save them on tax benefits. So you can start by, if they work for a company, you can search for their company and see if they provide stock gifts, or you can just search for an individual's name. I went through this process with a CEO's name, a former CEO, I think they're retired now. I have it redacted just for some privacy. Some other searches I'll do on here are public figures, maybe politicians, and I didn't redact their names because it's all public information. But if I've redacted it, it's probably a private citizen. So I typed in a name there, and I got some search results back. On this one, I got 120 search results. Really, all you need is that name. You can change some of those things if you have those details, filing categories, dates, all of that. But all I did was type in a name of someone I thought would have stock gifts, which is a CEO. And then I just clicked on that first form 4, insider trading report. And then I know it's going to be probably a little difficult to read this on your screen because it's such a small form. but this is an example of what is on the Form 4. And what I have circled there is the amount of stock that this person has for this company. You'll see that this is kind of in the second section, Table 2. Table 1 is oftentimes more common, but it's going to show you the same information. That's a non-derivative security, and this is a derivative security. I'm not going to claim that I know a lot about those details, but this is where they have listed common stock. So for this individual, we can see that for this particular report, it's for 19 shares of stock valued at $142, and that they have the total 3,560.1 stocks valued at that. So then we can, multiply what that would be and get an idea of how much they have valued in that stock. And this is an insider trading report. So this would be stock that they got through work, work related part of their benefits, or just through being the CEO, they get a certain amount of shares of common stock. So that's what this particular form is. But there are other forms on here. This is just a good example of what you might find on the SEC page. So the second one is actually, we're going to jump over to Donor Search. And this is a really cool tool that I learned about this past year. So Donor Search, you can actually pay for and have as a database, but they have this free component on their homepage. So when you get to donorsearch.com, actually, I think it might be, it's dsgiving.com. It's going to be linked in to these slides. But dsgiving.com, if you scroll down, this is just on the homepage here. So you can type in a prospect's name, and any past donations of a sizable amount that I have record of will come up, and that could be charitable or political. So for this example, I did a public figure. This is a search I did for Mike DeWine. And so we see here, you can keep scrolling down. This is just a screenshot, but here's a couple of donations that are under his name. And we can double check that it's the right person, because it's Mike and Fran DeWine, that's his wife's name. And then we see an older donation there in that second one. It says Senator Michael DeWine. But you can see where they've donated to and kind of that gift range. And the first one's a little bit wider of a gift range. The second one, it's very clear what amount he gave that time, or she gave. They donated as a couple. These are usually pulled from annual reports or other filings. But this is one of my favorite tools. I've done individuals that are private citizens as well, and you just get a good idea of the kind of gifts they've made to other charities. Checking here if we have any questions. All right, so then we're going to go back to the other government source listed, the FEC, the Federal Election Commission. So this is where we're going to check if they've given to anyone's campaign. So when we get to the home page, fec.gov, it's just that first option, the campaign finance data, and that will give us a drop-down menu. And from that drop-down menu, we'll choose look up contributions from specific individuals. And then we'll get the opportunity to search. You can limit it. You can search by certain areas, because if you come up with a common name, you'll want to get it, to make sure you're in the right state or zip code. So I just chose, a common, political name right now, John Ossoff. So we can see he's from Georgia, so it's the right person likely. And you can see the campaign contributions that he made in 2019 and 20. And so we would see that this individual gave $1,000, several contributions of $1,000 and lower. So there's definitely some capacity there. We can see what campaigns they were given to. So then we can kind of, make some assumptions that of what kind of items are going to be important to this individual, and if there's, that affinity within our own organization. And then the last government piece that we had on that list was the Auditors or tax assessors website. And that's a different website for every single county. So you can always start with your local auditors page, or, you can actually just Google that. Sometimes I find that to be easier. Lucas County uses Aries. I live in Hancock County, actually, and we use a different system completely. So it looks totally different. So I'll take you through this one, but know that you might find a different circumstance entirely depending on the county you're searching in. So you can search by address if you have it, but sometimes it's easier. We're working with prospects that we have their names first, so we can just go to that owner search there at the top. And I searched for our city mayor, Mayor Wade, and we get a few results for that last name. And then we went to the second option, I think, since it says his full name there. And you just click on that address. And you'll get to kind of a homepage there for that address. And then you'll want to go to the transfer, or not the transfers, the values. No, the transfers. The transfers would be sales, so we would know the actual value of the home. Tax assessment value isn't always the same. In fact, it's likely not the same. So we want to go to the transfers to see how much was paid for the home. And then we would see, this one was purchased in 2005. So that data, it's going to be old, but that's how much that home was worth in 2005. We would assume, it's worth more now, but how much it was paid for at that time to get really that sense of value on that property. And so if someone has a lot of property listed, then, you can compound that information. But this gives us a good idea, of wealth. I mean, that doesn't tell us their income, but we know how much their property is valued for. So those were some publicly available sources. Like I said, it's not so important that you remember exactly how to get to them, just that they exist. You can always refer back to these slides or contact me for help on that. But then we'll go over some library resources that can also help you get this information. So if you don't have a library card, it's free for anyone in the state of Ohio to get a library card. Anywhere in Ohio, you can do so online and get instant access to our databases. So if you haven't received a library card from the Lucas County Public Library, it's very easy to do so. But the three databases that I'll show you today are Reference Solutions, Mergent Intellect, and Foundation Directory Online. So to get to those, they're actually listed on a few places, but we'll go to the grant and nonprofit support page. So if you start with our homepage, ToledoLibrary.org, and then go from that menu, click on services. In that very middle column is the grant and nonprofit support page. And then on that page, we have listed our databases. So you'll get to the top there, and you have to scroll down, and it looks like some of this got cut off here. So you'll scroll down to research tools. It's about middle of the page, and that's where we're going to have all of our databases listed. So the first one is Reference Solutions. If you've had familiarity with this before, it actually used to have a different name. It was Reference USA, but now it's called Reference Solutions. And when you click on that, you'd be asked to sign in. If you're not at a library, you'll need to use your library card number to access this. And we're going to scroll down a little bit when we get to that homepage, and we're going to get to the section Consumer and Lifestyle. You see there's some various databases here. You can pull a lot of information from this database based off populations or US businesses or even new people to your community, but we're just going to focus on the US Consumer and Lifestyle database here. And so I did a private citizen search on this one, so you'll see the redacted information. You just do a quick search by name, and if you think it's a common name, you can fill in the city, state data. And of course, I wanted all of that redacted, but then you'll get a list of matches there for first name, last name. You'll get their street address. And if they have a landline, you'll get a hit on the phone number. This database does not show cell phone numbers. I mean, there's a lot of protections behind those, but if they have a landline, it'll show up on here. And so if you could see an entry, you would just click on the name. And then we would get to this profile. Excuse me, I'm going to take a quick drink here. And so this profile has a lot of great stuff on it. So we get to see how long they've lived in their home. Are they married? They have their address on it. And then, oops, still on this page. And we can see estimated home income and estimated home value. And so the value is probably going to pull from that website that we were taking a look at, the Aries website. Again, this was a CEO, so that's a very high home value for Hancock County. And then the household income probably pulls from census data. And then you can see what census tract that would be in, and some other normal income levels and home values of that census tract. If we keep scrolling down on that page that we would be opening through Reference Solutions, then you can see some other data. So we have lifestyle interest. And so this can be pulled from a number of sources. It can be pulled, if they ever have magazine subscriptions, if someone, they can pull from, what they're purchasing from an Amazon.com or things like that. So we get some of those interests. So we see, charitable donors listed. We have some of their hobbies or other interests. They have a pet in the home. They're interested in investment in finance, hunting, or a truck enthusiast. So we get some really good data on this. And it's relatively reliable. I mean, these things change over time, or maybe they got signed up for a magazine subscription that they really didn't want, but it's relatively useful and reliable data. And there should be, this is the third section, the last section on this site. So this is the kind of stuff you can pull from reference solutions. You get that good overview of the kinds of interest of a household. I mean, we were searching for, in this case, a male, as we saw on the top, but these interests would also be listed for anyone in that household. So you kind of have to remember that when you're looking at this info. The other database on our website is Emergent Intellect, and it's going to have some similar stuff on it. So you would get to this homepage and you want to scroll down, and these are the databases that we can pull from. We would want to look at consumer data here. Demographics is also really good, but not for individuals. If you need some demographic info for your nonprofit, that's great. But consumer data will be those individuals. So that opens us up to this consumer lifestyle search. So I think I searched for the same person here. And then if there are multiple hits, you'll get a page that looks like this. It's going to ask you to pick the right person. It's just a breakout of where they're from. I think this one I ended up going, this might be a different person. I think I clicked on Cleveland in this instance. Or you can scroll down and you'll see their names and listings. And you would select the name. It would be a hyperlink, and you click on that profile. And then we start to look at that data again. So this person, they've been in their house for 7 years. It's a not too old of a house. Their estimated home income, $125,000. They're married. There's a senior in the household. They are a credit card user. So we start to get this data. It does say donator to charity or causes, yes. And their education. And even some more lifestyle data. It's going to be very similar to what we saw in Reference USA. If I were to tell you what my preference would be for database, it would be the data in Reference USA. It tends to be slightly more reliable than Emergent Intellect, but worth looking at for both of them. But we can get a good sense of some interest as well. And then the last tool that I'll show you from the library side is Foundation Directory Online. I'm not going to go too in depth on this because I do a separate workshop on this. It's a 2-hour workshop actually, because you can get a lot of information from this database. But kind of right now we're just focused on individuals. So the kind of information that you can pull about individuals would be in that advanced search filter, and it would open a box like this. And you can also use this to look for specific foundations or organizations. But like I said, we're looking for individuals here. So that who's box is what we'll type in. And this is where we're going to be able to find out if someone is affiliated with a foundation. So if they're on the board, if they work for a foundation, we'll be able to see that information here. So in this example, I typed in same individual I've been looking at before as the CEO. Of course, I rejected it, but you can see, that purple box gets filled in. That means that, they're in there. When you type in a name, you get a little drop-down menu of suggestions. You get a pretty good idea pretty quickly if they're in there or not. And so when I looked up this individual, I got 2 hits on grant makers. So they're on the list of 2 foundations. And then I would be able to go in that foundation profile and get that information. I think this person was on the Fifth Third Foundation. Fifth Third Bank, but that really just leads you to more information on the foundation itself, not necessarily on the individual. But it's good to know that one of your donors is on the board of a foundation. Any foot in the door that you can get on a foundation certainly would be welcome, I think. So I was hoping to get about 45 minutes in on that, and it looks like I was pretty close on timing there. That was actually the last little bit I was going to go over, and I wanted to save some time here at the end for questions. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to submit them in the chat or unmute yourself. I'm happy to go back and talk about some of the pieces I went over, or if there's something I didn't cover you have questions about, just let me know. Or you can raise your hand too if you like. There's one in the chat. Thanks, Nova. What I really hope, there are certainly more things out there that you can pay for your organization down the road, but it's great to know that you can get a lot of this data for free through the library or through publicly available data. Someday, your organization, if it doesn't already, pay for a Blackbaud, a Razor's Edge, or a LexisNexis, or all those expensive databases, but there's a lot that you can gain from things that are just already available and that you should be looking into to just get a really good sense of what your donors are capable of. So if you don't have other questions though, I wanted to have my contact information up here. So feel free to reach out to me as you have questions over this, or you're having trouble accessing one of the things I covered here today. Like I said, you'll get the slides and this recording. So you'll be able to refer back to it. If there's any links, I'll have them hyperlinked in there, but you'll get that probably within the next day or so. So I'll be online here for another few minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to stick around, submit them in the chat. But thanks for coming here today. We have a couple other programs coming up for grant writing. Next month, we have one on, let's see, next month is February. So February 25th is the getting ready for grants. If that's something you're interested in, you can get that info on our website on that grant page that I showed you as well. So take a look at all of those resources. And like I said, happy to help when I can.